Computation with number bases and positional systems. So we're going to start with the first example, adding two numbers in base 2. So we're going to start 1 plus 1, that's 2, but we can't write 2 in base 2, so we're going to use division. So how many times 2 can go into 2? That's 1. So always we carry the 1, and now the remainder is 0, and we write down the 0. So keep in mind, we always write the remainder and we carry the 1. Again now, 1 plus 1, that's 2. We're going to use division because we can't write 2 in base 2. So keep in mind, we carry the 1, the quotient, we carry always the quotient, and then we write down the remainder. Now 1 plus 0, that's 1, and 1 plus 1, that's 2, and we know that the quotient is 1 and the remainder is 0, so we write the remainder, then the quotient. We're adding two numbers in base 5, so we're going to start 1 plus 1, that's 2, so we don't have issues with 2 in base 5, so we can write it down. Now 4 plus 2, that's 6, so we're going to divide 6 by 5. The quotient is 1, so we always carry the quotient. Now the remainder is 1, we write down the remainder. Now again, 1 plus 2 plus 3, that's 6, so we're going to carry the quotient and write down the remainder. Now 1 plus 3 plus 1, that's 5. So we're going to divide 5 by 5. So the quotient is 1 and the remainder is 0. So the answer is 0, 1. So that's the answer of our example. Keep in mind, we write first the remainder and then the quotient. Another example is 5 plus 3, that's 8. We can't write 8 in base 7, so we're going to use division. We carry always the quotient, and we're going to write down the remainder. Now, 1 plus 4 plus 2, that's 7. So we're going to use division because we can't write 7 in base 7. Therefore, the quotient is 1, and keep in mind we always carry the quotient, and the remainder is 0. Now we have 1 plus 2 plus 4, that's 7. Again, so we write down 0 and we carry the quotient. Now 1 plus 6 plus 4, that's 11. So the quotient is 1 and the remainder is 4. So we write the remainder, then the quotient. Now multiplication. We're multiplying two numbers in base 6. We have 5 times 3, that's 15. So 15 divided by 6, the quotient is 2. So we always carry the quotient, and the remainder is 3. So we write down the remainder. Now 3 times 3, that's 9, plus 2, that's 11. So we're going to divide 11 by 6. So the quotient is 1, so we always carry the quotient, and the remainder is 5. Now 2 times 3, that's 6, plus 1, that's 7. So 7 divided by 6, the quotient is 1, and the remainder is also 1. So first we write the remainder, then the quotient. Another example, we're multiplying two numbers in base 8. So 4 times 6, that's 24. 24 divided by 8, the quotient is 3, and the remainder is 0. So we write down 0, and we carry the quotient. Now 4 times 2, that's 8, plus 3, that's 11. So 11 divided by 8, the quotient is 1. So we carry the quotient, and the remainder is 3. So we write the remainder, and we carry the quotient. Now 4 times 1, that's 4, plus 1, that's 5. So we don't have issues, we can write 5. Now subtraction. I need to subtract 8 from 7, we can't, so we're going to borrow. So we're going to borrow 1. So the 3 will become 2, and the 1 we borrow will become 9. But already we have 7, so we need to add it to 7. Therefore, we're going to subtract 16 minus 8, that's 8. Now we need to subtract 2 minus 4, we can't, so we need to borrow. The 1 will become 0, and the 1 we borrow will become 9. But already we have 2, so 9 plus 2, that's 11. Now 11 minus 4, that's 7. So the answer to our example is 78 in base 9. Another example, we're subtracting two numbers in base 2. So 1 minus 1, that's 0. Now I need to subtract 1 from 0, so we have to borrow. So 0 minus 1 we can't, so we have to borrow. So now we can borrow from 1. The 1 will become 0, and the 1 we borrow will become 2. Now we can borrow. This one will become 1, and the 1 we borrow become 2. So 2 minus 1, that's 1. And now 1 minus 1, that's 0. And we can bring down the 0 and the 1. So the answer for our example is as such. Division, we're dividing two numbers in base 5. So we're going to start with the 4. 4 divided by 3, that's 1. Remainder 1. Now bring down the 1, that's 11. 11 divided by 3 in base 5. So we're going to look at the table. And keep in mind, we're looking at the column or the row that has 3. So 11 divided by 3, that's going to be 2. So 2 times 3, that's 11 in base 5. Remainder 0. We're going to bring down the 2. 2 divided by 3, that's 0. So the answer is 120 base 5, and the remainder 2 base 5. Another example, we're dividing 324 in base 5. So we can't divide 3 by 4. So we're going to take 32. 32 divided by 4. So we're looking at the table, and we need to look at the row that has 4 or at the column that has 4. Now we see that 31 is the closest number to 32. So 31 divided by 4, that's 4. So 4 times 4, that's 31. Now we're going to bring down 4. So 14 divided by 4. So the closest number is 13. So 13 divided by 4, that's 2. So 2 times 4, that's 13. And the remainder is 1. So the answer to our example is 42 base 5, and the remainder is 1 base 5.